Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to whoever might be listening. My name is Orbit. Today I'm here to tell you a story. I invite you to join me in the journey of my story, Absolute Zero. Enjoy. The snoring guard was woken by a small group of excited scientists. They ran by his cubicle, tittering and jumping about, waving large papers in the air and screaming at the top of their lungs. Their faces were covered with expressions of absolute surprise, which ranged from extreme exhilaration to utter fear. Some were as pale as their long lab coats, which fluttered behind them as they ran. Some were as red as overly ripe tomatoes. The guard chuckled at that and got up. As security personnel, he was obliged to follow them, make sure they don't hurt themselves or anyone else. Straightening his tie and brushing off the dust that settled on his cap, the tall guard stood up and began chasing after the scientists with long, heavy steps. His eyes trailed the men and women ahead of him as his hand reached for his comms and demanded an explanation to this madness. When the general told him what had just happened, the guard stopped short in his tracks. Pale as moonlight, he turned around and sprinted the other way, back to where the scientists came from. He could still hear their screams of shock echo through the long cave that was their headquarters, still smell the trails of sweat they left behind. But he paid no attention to any of those senses. All that mattered now was reaching the lab and witnessing the results for himself. It hasn't been that long since he started serving as a guard at the administration. The underground laboratories offered a hefty salary for the likes of him, the tall, broad-chested kind who can fend off any unwanted visitors. They also let him carry a thick metal rod in case of an emergency. He was fiddling with it now as he ran, his steps bouncing off the walls, echoing as well down the tunnels. A left turn here, a right turn there, open this door to your right, continue across the hall, take another right, and there he was, the lab. His jaw went slack the moment he saw what the scientists have done. Just as he was going to inquire about the towering light that shimmered in front of him, the dozen scientists burst through the door ahead of him, across the dimly lit room. Following them was the general, his long hair tightly combed under his olive-green cap, and the lady, co-owner of the administration. Her slim, pale face was covered by a green-dotted white veil, yet the guard could glimpse her legs tensing up, her arms balling up into fists of shock, her chin dropping down slightly as she opened her mouth in awe. The same expression was smeared on the general's prickly face, and his thin eyes opened wide at the sight of the whatever it was that floated in the middle of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," began a tall scientist with long, autumn-brown hair, "today we have made an astonishing breakthrough in the realms of the known sciences." Turning around, the guard saw a small group of other administration workers. The general's secretary stood, small and frail, in front of the janitor, who leaned on his broom in awe. The guard glimpsed Mr. Tim from the upper level, Lady Frital from the marine biology lab, and Dr. Strone, the old, backbent researcher of the human mind. All stood around the sharp, icy glow in the center of the room, taking care not to step too close. All wore masks of complete disbelief. Another scientist coughed. From his name tag, the guard understood his name was L. Phillips. From his round shape, the guard understood he favored watching TV over going to the gym. The man began talking. "This, my fellow intellectuals," he said, "is the coldest phenomenon in the history of the entire universe. This right here," he waved vaguely at the light, "is absolute zero." The crowd inhaled sharply. The guard stood staring at the scientists, his mind screaming. "I barely finished college, and even I know something so cold should not exist," he thought to himself. Yet he let fat Dr. Phillips continue speaking. "You are all probably thinking that we absolutely lost our minds. Well, my friends, I'm very glad to tell you that we did not. This right here is what happens when a group of atoms is cooled down to the coldest temperature possible in the universe." The general coughed. Doctor," he interrupted, "could you please explain how cooling down just a few atoms could create such a large, portal, sir, said the tall woman. We refer to it as a portal. A portal? The guard couldn't help himself anymore. A portal to where, exactly? The woman turned to him. Her huge eyes were as icy as the portal, as they skimmed him over, yet her face eased up once she realized he was only a guard. Well, she began, this is where it gets bad. The lady raised her hand to speak. Excuse me, she turned to a short, bristly man by the name of J. Jones. What do you mean by bad? I thought this discovery was good. The man was sweating profusely. Well, Miss Lady, ma'am, he blabbered, his tongue apparently tied in a knot. This is, an expanding, universe-ending, bomb. The general spat in shock, and all the occupants of the room took several long steps backwards. Dr. Phillips lifted his hands up. People, please remain calm, he gulped. We still have a week, we estimate, before the portal opens to an uncontainable size and explodes, leaving nothing but an absolutely frozen tundra of a universe in its wake. He smiled nervously. Nothing to worry about. The room collapsed into chaos. The lesser-educated workers took their leave immediately, scrambling out of the room like goats from a wolf. The marine biologist was arguing loudly with one of the scientists, and the tall woman, whose name, the guard noticed, was P. Alany, was screaming at Dr. Phillips. The general was trying to restore order by yelling, which only made the chaos way worse. The shouting died down immediately once Lady coughed. She scanned the room behind her veil. Her hands have relaxed, the guard noticed, and she stood straight, with authority. I have a suggestion, she spoke. How about we send a unit into the portal? Maybe we could shut it down from inside or something. Your ladyship, chuckled the ginger scientist named J. Batson loudly. There's another part to this that you do not understand. Oh boy, mumbled the general, his face burrowed in his palm. He's shaking, the guard noticed. Oh boy. Yeah, the general's reaction is fitting, continued Batson. You see, we believe that on the other side of this portal is not a place here on Earth, nor in our galaxy, not even in this universe. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand and sniffled. This, good people, is a portal to another universe. A universe just like ours, teeming with life. Probably. It must be, since the investigating team we have sent claimed that the moment they cross, they felt as if time stopped. Every single one of their atoms has frozen, and they're up at the ER, nursing their freezing burns. His point, Phillips gave Batson a sharp look, is that the investigators arrived in a space much like ours. They saw stars, planets, asteroids, yet instead of being of the pure black fabric our space is made of, they stated that this one is gray, like an oncoming storm. A gray universe? The marine biologist pouted. I don't understand enough in these physics to be here. I'm gone. She left the door swinging shut violently, her boots clicking against the marble floor. Yeah, same here, snapped Mr. Tim, following Friddle down the long, twisted hall outside. God, it must be past midnight, wondered the guard, but my heart is rushing like a little kid's. Sir General, continued Phillips, if we dare throw a bomb into this universe, it will only expand more, even if the bomb is infinitely stronger than our sun. There hardly is anything we can do now. You dare suggesting letting this monster hole engulf our entire existence? Are you out of your mind? An idea popped into the guard's mind. As the puzzled scientists tried to explain the facts to the stubborn general, the guard was thinking deep, calculating, contemplating. He said. The remaining people turned to him, their faces awash with exhaustion and fear. He stuck his hands in his front pockets. I think I might have a solution to your problem. Suddenly, they were interested in what he had to say. He could tell by the way their eyes opened wide, by the hope that now replaced the fear on their faces. All but the general, who huffed and spat. "This better be good," he warned the guard. "Oh, it will be," thought the guard. "Once I get this plan going, I can call Lord Kaichi and tell him about this phenomenon, the things he could do with this information in his hands." "Well," asked Batson, "what do you got?" The guard smiled. His teeth glinted in the icy glow of the portal, his dark emerald eyes scanning his audience. "Have you fellas ever heard about the Bose-Einstein conductor?" Their empty faces confirmed his suspicion. "Great, so they will do anything I say. And in the meantime..." "Well, the Bose-Einstein conductor is a theoretical machine, developed by my college professor, actually, a while back." He checked them again, looking for sparks of understanding. Yet their faces remained empty. "My professor, let's call him Jim, was deeply interested in this phenomenon that you have created, this absolute zero. He experimented lengthily, and in his free time he would build a large machine that was meant to contain the particles that would theoretically form as the absolute zero matter developed. So, he came up with the Bose-Einstein conductor." The guard saw smiles creeping on the scientists' faces. Those would have to be cut short. "Unfortunately," he continued, "several years after he began his work, the university confiscated it and fired him upon the discovery. He soon turned to drugs and eventually withered away in a jail cell, babbling about a parallel universe and more cocaine." Phillips grunted in annoyance. "That is very interesting, sir, but what does a drug-addicted lunatic have to do with this deadly problem?" "Well," the guard said, "I have his notes, his plans, his research, all in a notebook he left when he was fired." "Now that is a bit more helpful," mused Lady. "May we see it, sir?" "Why, yes, of course," he mused back at her. "I will give you the research papers, and you can start immediately." "Why should we follow them?" boomed the general. "How should the scientists know your what's-his-face professor is credible?" The guard laughed at that, which turned the general beet red. "Well, sir, it's either trying those blueprints or awaiting the absolute certain destruction of the universe. Is there really a choice?" When the general didn't respond, the guard turned around and walked toward the door. "I'll get you all the research, don't worry," he said, pulling the door wildly and exiting the room into the even darker tunnel. He chuckled in the dark, imagining the praises Lord Kaichi would lay on him if he actually finished his task. All he needed to do was let them scramble at the ridiculous, barely legible babblings of his mad professor, and behind the scenes, he could absolutely use this portal to his advantage. The guard barged into his cubicle and slammed on the wall. "Wake up," he bellowed at the other sleepy guards. "We have work to do." The end. Thank you so very much for joining me and listening in. I truly hope that you enjoyed and that my story has made your day just a little bit better. Have an awesome rest of your day.